Let's break it down straight from the hill to your hometown. No spin, no hype, just facts we find. AI's on the case, no truth left behind. Laws are written, deals are made. Who's got your back, who's throwing shade? We cut through the noise, decode the text, keeping it real. Congress in context, Congress in context, shining the light, breaking it down so you know what's right. Policies, votes, who's working for you? We bring the facts, the power is you.
Welcome to Congress in Context.
Great to be diving in again.
Yeah, today we're looking at the Congressional Record from Monday, April 14th, 2025. That's volume 171, number 66, for anyone keeping score at home.
Indeed. And it's our job, really, to sift through that official record, the House and Senate proceedings, and pull out what matters.
Exactly. Kind of a shortcut to understanding what lawmakers were actually doing that day.
And what it might mean down the line.
So let's start with the House. The record says it was called to order by Speaker pro tempore, Mr. Whitman.
That's right. After the opening prayer by Monsignor Rossetti, then they approved the journal from the last session, Pledge of Allegiance. The usual start.
Okay, the preliminaries. And Mr. Whitman was in the chair because Speaker Johnson sent a communication.
Yeah, basically delegating the duties for the day. It happens all the time. Scheduling travel, the House needs someone presiding, standard procedure.
Got it. Now, over in the Senate, things sounded quieter.
Very quiet. It was a pro forma session.
Pro forma.
Meaning they basically gavel in and gavel out. No real legislative business. It's often done just to meet the constitutional rule that neither chamber can adjourn for more than 3 days without the other's okay.
Right. Keeps the calendar ticking over technically.
Exactly. But they did note one thing. Senator Hawley was appointed acting president pro tempore for that brief session.
Okay, another temporary role similar to Mr. Whitman in the House.
Precisely. So our plan today is to look past some of that procedural stuff and really dig into the substance, right?
Yeah. The bills introduced, any messages flying back and forth, appointments, and what's the potential impact?
Let's do it. Back to the House then. After the opening formalities, what came next?
Well, there was a message from the Senate. It says they passed H.J. Res. 20 without amendment.
Okay, H.J. Res. 20. So a House joint resolution. These are interesting.
How so? What makes them different from a regular bill?
Well, they need approval from both chambers, just like a bill. And they often deal with specific items, things like continuing appropriations, sometimes proposing constitutional amendments, or like in this case, appointments.
Appointments. What was this one about?
H.J. Res. 20 concerned appointments to the Senate National Security Working Group and also the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission for the 119th Congress.
Okay, so national security in China. Big topics.
Absolutely. The fact the Senate passed it without changes suggests, pretty broad agreement on who should be serving on those important bodies. It definitely signals ongoing focus there.
Makes sense. Now, the House also got messages directly from the president. 2 of them, it looks like.
Yes, President Trump sent over a couple. The first one was about Russia.
Let me guess. Continuing the national emergency.
You got it. It relates to that Executive Order 14024 from back in April 2021.
Right, the one about harmful foreign activities.
Exactly. The message basically says those activities, things like election interference, cyber stuff, corruption, targeting dissidents, undermining security, violating international law, they all still pose an unusual and extraordinary threat.
So the administration sees the threat as ongoing, needing that emergency status to continue beyond April 2025.
That's the assessment, yeah. It keeps certain authorities active.
Okay. And the second message from the president sounded different. Regulatory relief.
Yeah, this was a proclamation about an EPA rule, specifically the National Emission Standards for Hazardous Air Pollutants, or NESHAPs.
Okay.
The president issued an exemption for certain coal and oil-fired power plants from a stricter version of that rule.
An exemption, why?
The reasoning given was grid reliability and affordability, also energy security. The message states the technology needed to meet the stricter standard isn't quite there yet.
So they're pushing the deadline back.
Pushing the compliance date to July 8th, 2029 for the specific plants listed in an annex. They argue it's in the national security interest to keep those plants running reliably for now.
Interesting. So a specific carve-out based on tech availability and grid concerns.
Yeah.
Very different from the Russia message.
Very different, yeah. Shows the range of executive actions Congress gets notified about.
Okay, moving on from presidential messages. Appointments made by the Speaker.
Right. Speaker Johnson made a few. Representative Stefanik was appointed to the Board of Trustees for the Harry S. Truman Scholarship Foundation.
Ah, the public service scholarships.
Yep. And then both Representative Stefanik and Representative Nunn of Iowa were appointed to the Congressional Executive Commission on the People's Republic of China.
That China Commission again. It keeps popping up.
It does. It monitors human rights and rule of law in China. So these appointments, they put specific members into roles focused on developing future leaders and overseeing that critical relationship with China.
Shows where some priorities lie, I suppose. Then there's another joint resolution mentioned, HJ Res 25. This one was presented to the president.
Correct. On April 1st, actually. This one was about an IRS rule.
IRS, what rule?
It dealt with gross proceeds reporting by brokers that regularly provide services effectuating digital asset sales.
Okay. Crypto reporting, basically.
Essentially, yes. How brokers report crypto sales. The key thing here is why it was presented to the president.
Why?
It implies Congress used the Congressional Review Act, the CRA, to disapprove of that IRS rule.
Ah, the CRA. The tool Congress has to overturn agency regulations they don't like.
Exactly. So this shows Congress stepping in to push back on a specific regulatory action, particularly in this, fast-moving digital asset space, oversight in action.
Fascinating to see them using the CRA on something like crypto rules. All right, let's talk about the main event for many days. New bills being introduced. Looks like quite a few on April 14th.
13 public bills and 3 resolutions. Yeah, a real mix.
Can we group them maybe? What themes jump out?
Definitely. You had Disaster Relief H.R. 2907 from Stanton and Bresnahan. That one's about getting federal help before disaster hits for mitigation projects.
Proactive. Sounds good.
What else? Taxation was huge, really diverse approaches there.
Like what?
Well, H.R. 2908 from Barr looked at applying income tax bracket breakpoints to capital gains. Then H.R. 2909 from Craig and others aimed to completely repeal the tax on Social Security benefits.
Wow, that would be significant.
Huge. And then on the other side, H.R. 2912 from Lee of Pennsylvania proposed establishing a wealth tax.
A wealth tax.
And H.R. 2918 from Stube and McCormick dealt with estate taxes, specifically excluding bequests to certain nonprofits. And one more tax-related one, H.R. 2915 from Moore of Alabama.
Yes.
That one proposed stopping the IRS from providing firearms and ammo to its employees. Kind of a mix of tax administration and potentially Second Amendment debate fodder.
Huh. Quite the range just within taxation. Any other major areas?
Sure. Workforce development. H.R. 2910 from Harder of California would set up grants for youth workforce readiness programs, specifically outside of school hours.
Okay.
Education, too. H.R. 2911 from Kim and Stevens wants to promote accounting careers as part of STEM.
Interesting angle. Accounting and STEM. Okay. What about foreign affairs? Always relevant.
Yep. H.R. 2913 from Meeks and a bipartisan group proposed authorizing more support for Ukraine.
Continued support for Ukraine.
And H.R. 2914 from Molinar and Panetta focused on sanctions related to China's support for Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
So pressure on China regarding Russia. Got it.
We also saw bills on Native American affairs, H.R. 2916 from Stefanik on the Akwesasne Mohawk land claim settlement.
Okay.
Government oversight popped up too. Stefanik again with H.R. 2917 wanting to track taxpayer money going to adversarial countries. And H.R. 2919 from VZ aimed to ban federal funds for certain parades.
More specific spending control.
Then you had resolutions, H. Conres 28 from Ross, expressing the sense of Congress that overseas military votes must count.
Important message there.
HRES 332 from Adams supporting Black Maternal Health Week, and HRES 333 from Norton about D.C. emancipation and celebrating the House passing the D.C. statehood bill.
A really broad spectrum, from global security to local D.C. history.
It really shows the sheer variety of issues Congress grapples with on any given day.
And each bill includes that constitutional authority statement, right? Remind us why that's there.
It's a House rule. Every bill has to point to the specific part of the Constitution, usually Article 1, Section 8, which lists Congress's powers that lawmakers believe gives them the right to pass that law.
So grounding the action in the Constitution.
Basically, yeah. It's fundamental.
We also see a list of additional sponsors. What does that tell us?
That's all about building support. When a bill gets more co-sponsors, it shows it's gaining traction, building a coalition. It might improve its chances of moving forward.
So it's a sign of legislative momentum.
A potential sign, yes. Seeing names added means people are actively working to push that bill or resolution. The list here covers lots of different bills, showing that ongoing process across the board.
Okay. And finally, for the House business, a committee report from Oversight and Government Reform.
Right, HREPT. 1959. This was their authorization and oversight plans.
Uh-huh.
It's more internal housekeeping.
Like their agenda for the term.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Each committee outlines what legislation it plans to consider and what areas of the government it plans to oversee. It's about organization and accountability within the House itself.
Okay, that wraps up the main House actions. And the Senate, as we said, was pro forma, mostly quiet.
Yeah, met briefly, appointed Hawley as acting president pro tem, and adjourned until Thursday. Minimal action recorded.
Which brings us to the extensions of remarks.
Yeah.
This is where members can add things to the record without actually speaking on the floor.
Exactly. It's a place to insert statements, tributes, explanations of votes, articles, whatever they want officially recorded. It gives a different flavor of what's on members' minds.
What kind of things showed up here on this day?
A real mix again. You had Representative Betty McCollum inserting a speech strongly opposing the Republican budget resolution.
What were her concerns?
She talked about cuts to things like Medicaid and SNP, arguing they were aimed at funding tax breaks for the wealthy. Standard partisan debate points, but put formally on the record.
Okay, policy debate. What else?
Tributes. Representative Zachary Nunn honored Roland R.W. Nelson, a co-founder of Kemin Industries in Iowa, highlighting his business and community impact.
Recognizing constituents.
Yes. And Representative Tom Barrett recognized Bobby Bright as the American Legion's Veteran of the Year for his ongoing service to vets. Representative Dusty Johnson commemorated Education and Sharing Day, honoring Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the Rebbe, and his focus on ethics and education.
So honoring people and principles.
Definitely. It adds a more personal dimension. Representative McCollum also submitted an explanation for her votes on amendments to something called the Deterrent Act, H.R. 1048.
Why explain her votes?
She raised concerns about due process and lack of clear definitions in the bill about which countries or entities were of concern. It gives insight into the reasoning behind a vote beyond just yay or nay.
Nuance on national security legislation.
Right. And Representative Mark Alford recognized a constituent, Danny Wells, for heroism rescuing a child in the cold. Alford noted Wells was an Army veteran, emphasizing community service.
Highlighting local heroes. It's quite a range in these extensions.
It really is, from deep policy disagreements to celebrating individual acts of kindness or service.
So looking back at this single day, April 14th, 2025, it's clear Congress is juggling a huge amount.
Absolutely. National security, energy policy, taxes, healthcare, digital assets, disaster prep, honoring people. It's all happening simultaneously.
And the things we talked about, the bills introduced, the messages, they're often just the starting point, aren't they?
Oh, definitely. A bill introduction is step one. Committees, debates, amendments, votes in both chambers. It's a long road for most legislation. And the messages and remarks often reflect these much larger ongoing debates.
Well, we hope this deep dive is, peeled back the curtain a bit on what actually happens on a given day in Congress.
And remember, this information isn't hidden. The congressional record is public. Anyone can go online to the Government Publishing Office, gpo.gov, and look this stuff up.
Yeah, search for bills, see what your representatives are sponsoring or saying.
Following your members, understanding their committee assignments, contacting their offices, it's all part of being an engaged citizen, right?
Absolutely. So as you listen today, what stood out? What questions does this raise for you about how our government works or the issues being debated?
That's the real takeaway, perhaps. Use this as a jumping off point to dig deeper into what matters to you.
This has been Congress in Context. We'll be back soon with another deep dive. Until then, keep asking questions.